Right back. Hello, everybody. It is Saturday night at 9 o'clock Eastern Time. I'm Chris Weuve, and this is Starfleet Tactical. And I have with me tonight Starfleet Tactical founder, something like that, Alec Peters.
How's everyone doing tonight?
You're sounding a little soft. I just noticed you're sounding a little soft, but
I'll have to keep my mic a little closer.
He's got a fancy microphone. I just have my microphone on my laptop, and as you can see, I'm coming from my new apartment. I might sound a little echoey, and that's because this room has relatively close walls, and I don't yet have everything in the room. Once I have everything on the shelves, I'll see if it still sounds echoey, and if necessary, up there and back, I'll put some sound dampening panels. But I have indeed moved to the new house. Wright was asking me if I had a bed to sleep on. I am in the camping in your own house phase of the move, but I do have a bed. I have a kitchen. I have stuff in my refrigerator. What I don't have is all my bookcases, because like all these bookcases are going to go in the guest room, and there's going to be a new wall of bookcases there. And
yeah, and that's one of the things I notice when watching YouTube, watching all the influencers, everything. I pay a lot of attention to how people do their backgrounds, and almost everyone has a wall of bookcases in the back, or more or less something like that. And but unfortunately, just in the way my room in my office is set up, my bookcases are like on the side, and they're not behind me. Although it does get me a lot of questions about my skydiver. Everyone always asks me about the skydiver there.
Well, the thing is, everybody has one of two things. If they're an academic, they have a wall of bookcases behind them. If they're like somebody like Joe Scott or somebody like that, who's like a YouTube personality, does informative videos, they've got a set of IKEA Kallax things there, the cubicle ones, and one of those cubes very prominently has the award you get from YouTube when you hit like 100,000 subscribers.
Yeah, Crystal stole that and put it in her office.
Right there. I'm going to put it right there. Actually, probably over there, because then you'll be able to see it behind my head.
Yes.
So we're a little short right now. We'll get there.
Well, and I'll tell you, that is something. I listen a lot to, I listen a lot to things about technology, AI, whatever, in my podcast. I try and mix up my podcasts. It's not just the resistance, as Wright would say. It's not just my political podcast, but, I would say right now my breakup is about 40% political podcasts, 40% health and wellness, 20% technology. And I was listening to an interesting thing today with Jensen Huang, is it the president and CEO of NVIDIA? Like, okay. He has 7 thoughts on the future of AI. All of which is it's going to change everything, and not in the ways you people are thinking. And so that was really interesting. That was really thought provoking. He said yes. And it was interesting. He basically says, yes, a lot of people are going to lose their jobs, but more than those number of jobs are going to be created. And
That's the way it's always worked out with technology. It's always, you know, for every slide rule manufacturer who went out of business, you know, the calculator companies hired all those people, right? Because they were all math people, and so the calculator companies hired them, and stuff like that. But this one, maybe that'll be the way that this works with this one. We'll see.
And now the other interesting thing was the big news was Google. Basically, they call it acqui-hiring. Google went after Windsurf, and Windsurf is one of the big AI vibe coding companies. Vibe coding being you don't code, you just tell the computer what to code, and it does it for you. So you don't have. And I did that. I created a whole website for my new business, and I just vibe coded the whole thing on Lovable. So. Google went after Windsurf, which is one of the big vibe coding companies, and what they did was they basically hired away the key staff, and even one of the co-founders got kind of screwed in the deal. He basically got a deal that didn't really reward him for everything that he built at Windsurf, so he said, "Fuck you." And especially because Google made it an exploding offer. They gave him 24 hours to decide, which didn't give him a lot. But he said, screw you. And then this was on a weekend. This was like 2 weekends ago. And then on the Monday, he sold the company to Confection, I think it is. Not that's the wrong word, but a company that sounds like that. And then they took everyone else. Now the problem is that it's setting up a situation which no one wants, where companies go after other startups, and all they do is bring the founders on board, jettisoning, you know, everything. Now, and the reason this is important is in the AI space. AI companies do not hire a lot of people. Like the Chinese company DeepSeek that does DeepSeek has 150 people, right?
Wow.
Most of these AI, and they were talking about the other AI companies here. And so what's happening is there's this runaway inflation to get the best people in your company, because you don't need to hire, you know, you're not trying to build a company with 3,000 people. You're trying to build a company with 150 people, but you want like the 150 best people in the country. So, so that's why we're hearing stories of some of these AI gurus getting $100 million, you know, to sign on with Meta, because Meta's like, we just need the best. We don't need a ton. Let's go out and get the best and pay them absurd amounts of money. The challenge is going to be that all these little startups, if bigger startups start acquiring them, or bigger companies start acquiring them and just cherry picking the top people, then the incentive in startups is always your stock options. It's either founder stock or it's an qualified employee stock option program. That's how you make your money, right? You pay your bills with your salary, and you create wealth through stock options and founder stock. Well, if that's founder stock or stock options are no longer guaranteed, if your company is successful, if all that's going to happen is the founders are going to go to some other company and you're left holding the bag, then you're not going to go to work for that company. So what they're doing is that's one of the reasons that these guys are getting paid ridiculous amounts of money. So like, you know, AI guys who are coding AI right now, they're getting $250,000, $350,000 a year.
Yeah.
That's like the basic one.
Yeah.
And the bigger guys are getting millions of dollars with huge sign-on bonuses. So it's not just the technology that is upending things. It is the infrastructure of Silicon Valley that is being, and I was in that space for, you know, a number of years when I had my startup, and I you know, ironically, knew everyone in the PayPal mafia because they almost bought my company. So yeah, so it's really interesting, but I have to keep forcing myself to listen to these. Like I listen to one of the daily AI news shows, just because if you're not listening every single day, I mean, it's just crazy the way things.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm using AI right now preparing a lawsuit that we've got coming up, and I researched it on months ago. I was like, I talked to my lawyer and I said, now, if I'm not mistaken, this is the way I see it. And he was like, yeah, that's pretty right. So I went back and used ChatGPT and dug into Georgia state law and how it works with federal law and what conspiracy laws are and blah, 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 blah. And then I started diving into jurisdiction how do you get jurisdiction over people in multiple jurisdictions? I got so much data. Like when we start this case, I'm going to be delivering, probably 30, 40, 50 pages worth of information outside of my actual evidence, just on, because one of the lawyers who we talked to in the firm, not the lawyer that's going to handle this, who is handling a matter for Crystal, I said, what do you know about this? And he goes, well, I'm not sure, blah, blah, blah. And in an afternoon, I knew more than he did.
Well, be careful of ChatGPT. It hallucinates.
Yeah, well, listen, one of the things that my lawyer, Dave, the one who's handling the Paul Jenkins matter, said, he said, yeah, it's like any of those tools, you use them and then you check everything, because you cannot, one of the problems in AI in the legal field is that AI will basically check the cliff notes and then give you a cliff notes version with citations of the cliff notes, not the citations that you need.
Well, it's been known to make up cases.
Yeah.
I mean, Google search AI at one point said that geologists recommend that everyone should eat 1 rock per day. So in the wargaming field, professional wargaming field, people. I started my new job, by the way. I'm still a professional wargamer, and I had a conversation just the other day, which I've had some version of this conversation like 14 times now, where a colleague said something about you can't use AI to design your game, but you can use AI to do some of the scut work. Right? Like doing injects, right? During a game, things happen every now and then. You want to stimulate the players. And so you basically, like, breaking news, here's a page of breaking news, right? Or here's a thing that you have to go deal with.
For you D&D players, that's the dungeon manager throwing the one-eyed monster.
Yeah. And so it's like, oh, okay, you went behind that door, here's the encounter you get, right? There's an equivalent of that in professional wargaming. And, so my colleague said something like, well, that's kind of scut work and you can have somebody do the scut work. And I had said the exact same thing to another colleague of mine who I'm not sure if she wants me using her name on YouTube. So I won't. But she said, there's another name for that, Chris, mentoring opportunity. And it's like, oh, shit, she's right. If you take away, the scout work is the thing that you have the junior person go do, and then you come back and you grade their work and you talk it over with them. And so if you take that out of the mix, it's de facto part of the training of newbies, but we don't think of it as being part of the training. It's not part of the official syllabus. Go do scout work for Chris. But in effect, it is part of the syllabus. And because it's not actually listed as part of the syllabus, people don't think of it in those terms. And there was something recently about a bunch of companies. Apparently, a bunch of companies have decided that all their intro-level work can be done by robots. And so they've said, well, we're still keeping the middle managers. We're just getting rid of the intro-level people. It's like, where does your next generation of middle managers come from? Right? I mean, that may work today. How does that work in 10 years?
Right.
How does that work in 10 years? And the answer is it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody asked the idea, let's see, let me find it here real quick. Yeah, Alyssa points out that salt is technically a rock. So is water if it's cold enough. Let's see. Bob said, any thoughts on AI commanders in the military, that he's moderating a panel on that topic at Worldcon next month. There's some interesting stuff there. The key phrases to look for, Bob, are Minotaur and Centaur. Somebody did a talk on this or did a paper on this about the idea of having AI commanders versus human execution versus human commanders and AI execution, and how you would think through all that. There's been a lot of work done on that, and exactly what role does the AI have. And then you start getting into conversations about human in the loop versus human on the loop, right? Human in the loop is a human has to push a button for the thing to happen. Human on the loop is a human can push a button to prevent the thing from happening. It's sort of command by negation is applied to a robot decision-making loop. And some of that stuff potentially gets very interesting. There's also a very interesting essay by a guy named Peter Layton. He's an Australian defense official who wrote a paper about 4 or 5 years ago now called Fighting Artificial Intelligence Battles, where he starts talking about how he thinks AI could change things like the OODA loop, that instead of observe, orient, decide, and act, observing is inherently a reactive task. You observe the other guy do something and then you react to it. Layton asked the question, what if AI gives me the ability to predict what the other guy is going to do, and sort of turns into gun kata? If you've ever read or seen the Christian Bale movie Equilibrium, have you seen that, Alec?
Yeah.
Yeah. So remember gun kata, about how you're predicting where the guy's going to be, and so the idea is basically because you've statistically analyzed thousands of gun battles and you're proficient with the gun fu known as gun kata, that you're already pointing your weapon down the hallway when the guy pops out, and you're already squeezing the trigger before the guy comes into view.
Right.
Nice if you can make that work. And I still intend at some point to do a read through of the Exordium series by Sherwood Smith and Dave Trowbridge. They do gun kata with starships. Which is really seriously cool. But I mean, the AI space is utterly fascinating, and I have no idea how it's going to turn out. I've been thinking that I need to start getting smart on that, because I haven't had the time to, I need another hobby, I need a hole in the head. And I know that I'll get sucked into it when I do it, but I need to start looking at it. So who knows? Maybe we'll just replace the two of us with robots.
Yeah, we can do, which you can do right now.
Yeah. In fact, I look at
on Google, just they already figured that out. That's like 2 months ago. I learned that. It's like, oh, here's how you can create a podcast without you having to be on the podcast. And
there's a format where it's basically a guy and a girl talking, a man and a woman talking, and they go back and forth. And I was listening to one of these, and I had always suspected that it was probably just AI doing it, because of there were certain little tells.
Yeah.
And the subject was, they were talking about the future of AI, and the guy says, well, we're both AI, so we perhaps know something about this. And she says, oh yeah, being an AI, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, exactly. There was a video on YouTube, and I forgot what it was on. Was it a military history thing or something? And after I'm like, after 30 seconds, I was only half watching it. I turned to the TV and I go, it's fucking AI, and I switched it off. I was like, I don't need AI telling me that.
I've noticed. I was listening to a lot of AI generated science fiction stories, and basically the HFY channel. Do you know about HFY?
No.
Stands for Humanity Fuck Yeah. So it's basically take Team America World Police, but then apply it to science fiction. So it's all about, plucky humans.
Yeah.
Plucky humans against the Galactic Council. And the Admiral's name is always Jake Morrison. I'm not joking when I say that. It's always Jake Morrison. But one of the things I noticed is that they were a lot better 2 months ago. Yes, they've gotten worse. And the AI voice that they use is really kind of choppy. He puts spaces in weird places, and and they mispronounce simple names. And it's like, maybe you shouldn't have the AI pronounce it. Maybe you should have one of those specific text-to-speech programs that this is a problem that we solved 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
Right.
So maybe you should use one of those things to read it, as opposed to the crappy AI that doesn't seem to know how to do that.
By the way, I'm using a new dictation app called it's called Whisperflow, and I forgot how it got recommended to me. And I think someone on one of the podcasts was using it. It's Whisper, like without an E at the end. I think Flow, FLOW, and it's and it works, in conjunction with it with any app on your phone. And it's fantastic because you can literally whisper to it. Like you don't have to. You don't have
to speak like this.
Yes, exactly. And I've one of the things I had to get used to was not saying period or comma, because it figures that shit out. So I started using that, and for the first time, I said, I dropped the F-bomb. And it picked it up, and I was like, oh, my kind of AI.
I need to upgrade my tool set. My tool set is the cutting edge of 2007. Definitely. Because
I'm looking at all this stuff now, and I'm using ChatGPT a lot, more and more. This morning I was walking, and I was walking this morning just asking ChatGPT questions. I was like, oh yeah, I asked it when I got home. I asked it, a new photo pops up on my Microsoft Windows desktop. I'm like, oh, that's beautiful. Where the fuck is that? So I just take a screen cap of it, and I said to ChatGPT, and I said, what is this? And they were like, oh yeah, that's Okinawa. I asked Home Depot while I was there, why don't they have this? Why don't they have a 5/16 or whatever? I was the 3/8 inch screw. They stop it at 5/16. And it told me, they said, oh, it's supposed to be in stock, but none of the stores have it. I'm checking everyone's inventory. I got my blood tests back. I just started asking ChatGPT questions about what's normal, what's not, and why did this happen, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I'm using it.
I need to start playing with that
for things that I might have used a couple months ago. I might have used a search engine for, or Siri. Now screw Siri. She's a bitch anyway. I asked ChatGPT, and it's, oh man, it's amazing. You just start getting used to asking things that, even sometimes things like, hey, I'm thinking of this. Give me some, options for dinner. We're going to travel up to Winder because we haven't been up there before. What are the dinner options there? And we hate Indian food. Oh, okay. Blah, 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 blah. It's amazing. It is amazing.
It's yet another instance where you watch shows from the past, and Star Trek, of course, being one of them. And you go like, this just sounds like, if you watch old Perry Masons and ask yourself the question, how much of this episode would happen if there was cell phones? The number of times where like the entire thing is based upon the fact that somebody's out of communication. What if they had cell phones? Does this episode still happen? And a lot of times the answer is no. I actually have an explanation for Star Trek.
Oh, what's that?
I think the explanation for Star Trek is it works better for later shows than it does for the original series. But I think the episode for Star Trek is that computing is so built into everything that they do that you don't see it nearly as much.
That totally makes sense. Absolutely.
And it also explains why they're all hyper competent all the time. Part of it is that they've got a really good computer support network that's doing stuff for them and stuff. Like I think that when whoever's got their finger on the phaser button, I don't think that they're putting in the targeting information. I think they're giving commands to the targeting computer. And the targeting computer is doing all the fancy stuff. And they're just basically saying, here are the parameters that I want you to take into account. It's basically like you asking about food, but instead it's like, how do I put a photon torpedo on them? Oh yeah, I pick option A.
So as some of the VFX have been coming off the line, as a matter of fact, here I was going to share something, just a little tidbit. This is a little rough. I shared on the Patreon today, but so I'll share it with everyone here. Not that this is going to prove my point.
One Horace Day points out that in the 24th century, elementary kids learn calculus, and I can't remember where we saw that, but that does sound familiar.
So this is just we were doing a rough composite trying to frame. This is the establishing shot for Admiral Threll in his office on Starbase 1. And so what we had Admiral Threll on green screen. So basically this shot is Admiral Threll here and a big green screen. Dana created the background, so everything else that you see here was created by Dana.
Okay.
So we wanted to get a ship out there. Like, what's he looking at? Oh, he's looking at a ship. So and the first generation had the Ares going, and it was like Dana had it at a funky angle, and it was going right to left, and it didn't match up with Threll's eye line. And I said, yeah, this isn't working. You've got him looking basically like no one looks at a ship that's going by them like that. No one stares at one spot, And so I said, if you're going to have him staring there at a ship, the ship basically, the action of the ship has to be where he's looking. So that's why we moved from action that was right to left, we moved action that's left to right, so that he's looking basically at the center of the ship, right? And then it turns and it heads away. And
it stays in his field of view the entire time.
Exactly. And the ship is like 1,000 feet off off of the station. But anyway, that is there you go. That is one. And this is a rough. That's not even the finished.
Looks nice though.
But yeah, all the Admiral Threll, all the Andorians are done now, and we're moving on to Admiral Travis is getting the treatment this week. I just approved the backgrounds for him, and and it looks good. Dana is the thing you got to understand about Dana. He's a perfectionist, and we were having problems with compositors.
Mm-hmm.
Dana was doing all the backgrounds, shipping off to a compositor, and what he got back, he was like totally not working. And I'm like, oh, that's what he sent back, And Dana's like, basically was like, all right, this compositing shit can't be that difficult, And the thing is, Dana has been, graphic designer for 20 years, and so he's used to working in Photoshop. He's used to working with, photos and images and light and all of that. So he understands light and light sources. And so he basically jumped on DaVinci Resolve and taught himself how to do it all. And we got back an image from a compositor who's a really nice guy, super guy, actually works on Star Trek. And he sent us one back, and I was like, okay, that's not doing it for me. So Dana did a comp, and it was perfect. It was I was like, oh my God, you did that? Okay, well, why don't you just do all this shit from now on? Which saves us a lot of time and effort and money, having him do it. But anyway, there you go. So there's a little Axonar update for you all.
I hope you remind him to check both ways before he crosses the street.
Oh yeah, believe me, I'm not letting him out of his basement very often.
Yeah.
Because
if you lost Dave, or if you lost Dana, you'd have issues.
Oh God, I know. So yeah, he's just doing amazing work.
Yeah, he does.
So episode 4, we got most of the VFX now. Episode 4, the music's done. Mark's been working on the soundtrack, on the sound design. Episode 4, a couple months, it's done. Yeah, so we're real excited about that. It's actually, episode 4 is actually coming along really nice. I just watched episode 5, the rough cut, which is way behind. I mean, it has no compositing done, and the VFX are being dropped in slowly, because we're doing everything in serial, not in parallel, right? So episode 4 is getting done first, and then episode 5. And it's so funny, as I've said many times, Francis Ford Coppola said, "You're never as good as your dailies or as bad as your rough cut." And I didn't understand that until I saw our rough cut. I heard that probably for the first time like 6 months ago. I heard it, and I was like, "Oh yes, I totally get it."
Listening to an interview with an actor, and I can't remember who it was, but they basically said, if you're an actor and you're making a movie, it is next to impossible to tell whether you're making a good movie or a bad movie.
Oh yeah,
making it.
Absolutely, because everything happens in the editing room, and
everything happens in the editing room. And I've come to the conclusion. I came to this conclusion a long time ago, that the key person in all of that is the Foley guy.
Foley's really important.
I think the audio guy is more important than the video.
Audio is way important. Yeah. I literally, you can get by with a mediocre DP. You cannot get by with a mediocre sound guy.
Yeah, and the classic example of that, of course, is Psycho. When you think of the movie Psycho, what do you think about?
Yeah, the sound.
Yeah, and the example I use from Star Trek is the episode from Next Generation will always have Paris.
Yeah,
the one with Michelle Phillips, and Michelle Phillips plays old flame of Picard. Picard had left her at a cafe,
right,
because he knew that he either could go with her or he could stay in Starfleet, and he chose Starfleet, so he dumped her without telling her. He just left her behind, and she went off and married some high-powered physics researcher who had screwed up time. So time is now broken,
right.
And the entire episode, I'm going like, there's something in this episode that I don't understand. I mean, there's something about this episode. I don't get it. And I didn't get it until the very end, when they played the Star Trek closing credits. And I went, it was a soundtrack. The entire episode is in a minor key. And you spend the entire time going, there's something wrong. And I can't put my finger on it. And so I immediately rewound the VCR tape to the beginning and rewatched the episode.
I just recently, and I wish I'd have to think about it, was listening to a director. They were talking about a movie we all know, and I don't even remember what it is right now, but it may come to me. And basically, it's on the tip of my. Basically, they cut the movie, and it didn't work. They said this. They did it like I think it was they did something in a linear timeline, and it didn't work. And like a week before it was going to be released, they totally changed the edit, totally,
Wow.
and made it work. And it was amazing to hear, because I was like, oh wow, and that movie is really, really good. But a week before it came out, it was really, really bad. But it just goes to show that how, you know, magic happens in the editing room. You know, and sometimes it's what you think, and sometimes it's not what you think. And I would say all of us, Dana, myself, Mark, we have learned some really, really important lessons over this. This has been a much different process than doing Prelude, and more actors, a lot more actors, right? Some practical, some composited. You know, new actors, you know, a recast role, an actor who is no longer with us. I mean, there were a lot of challenges in this, and that's why when people whine, when's this coming out? I'm like, oh, shut the fuck up. Like, it'll come out when it comes out, because it's really freaking good.
You're making something that's much closer to a professional movie than any of the other fan films, and you're doing it with a very small group of people
on a very, very small budget. And again, thank you, Dave and Goodney, for their stepping in and saving the production. But yeah, I tell you, I keep having more and more respect for the industry the more I do this. It's one of those things, like, the more I do it, the more I don't. Matter of fact, watching all this, because I love behind the scenes shit, right? Mm-hmm. Watching all the shit, all the BTS stuff, all the interviews with Tony Gilroy. Not just that, if you watch Screen Crush, I love Ryan Airy and Screen Crush. It's one of my favorite channels, because despite the cheesy blockbuster knockoff aesthetic that they use, and the stupid dog, which I hate, it's really, really smart. And their breakdown of Andor is freaking brilliant. It really is brilliant. I was learning about filmmaking from watching their breakdown of Andor. Then you go back to Andor and listen to how they did things. And this is why people said, oh, Alec, do you want to direct? No, direct? Are you kidding me? That is so, like, that is, I would have an easier time becoming an AI coder than I would directing film. Because directing film, one, it's the right brain, and I'm left brain, right? So a producer is exactly what I should be. It's much more closer to what I've been doing for 30 years, which is being an entrepreneur. But being a director is not only so creative, and there's some of the creative stuff that you know, I even have to argue with Mark and say, you know, you're not doing it that way. That makes no sense creatively. Like the eye line here with Thrill, right? So there's times I can figure that out. However, when you start talking about the art of filmmaking, the art of cinematography, holy crap! Like lenses and field of depth of field, and there's so much there, and composition, and I'm like, I can't do that, right? So, can I direct? Probably, with a phenomenal DP who's going to tell me what he's going to do, right? You know, but you know, so I could, you know, and even writing, you know, I recently got a wonderful compliment on the next 2 episodes from a Academy Award-winning editor. And he said, this is brilliantly written. And I was like, wow, thanks. But you know what? I can write Star Trek, I think. Don't put me in a writer's room doing another show. That is just not what I do, right? And so I've gotten so much respect for the industry and for the profession and for the craft. I mean, just like 10 years ago, you know, it was a phenomenal education to realize I would never be a great actor. You know, I'm just trying to hold on by my fingernails. But it's wonderful. It's wonderful learning that, because you realize how wonderful and complex filmmaking is. And so when you see something that's good, that's really good, you know, you can go, oh man, that is just brilliant. And like Andor, if anyone out there in TV land has not seen Andor already, I've got to.
I will admit that includes me.
Oh God, I am not going to be your friend much longer.
I have been told that I chose poorly when I got my new internet connection, and I chose Apple TV because I want to watch For All Mankind. I was told I should have gotten Disney, and so I could watch Andor. I have like next to no desire to give any money to Disney.
Well, listen. The way to play streaming services is to, like, if you sign up for Apple TV,
do the free trial, binge watch, and then
make a list of the ones you want to watch. Apple TV, you want to watch all of Ted Lasso twice. You want to watch For All Mankind. Maybe you watch Foundation. You know, it doesn't do it for me, but you know.
I've watched all through the end of season 2 of Foundation because I've got a friend who's really into it. And so I stayed at his place a couple of nights and we just binge watched. I mean, I all of Foundation that I watched over the course of 3 days.
Yeah. Okay.
Over 3 days.
Sturm has a comment. Sturm's comment is saw BTS behind the scenes about Ferris Bueller, and they said it was a mess and unwatchable, and so they re-edited it and changed the chronology. Yes, you know, there's a channel, and I think the channel is literally called "It Was a Shit Show." I think that's the name of the channel, because every one of its movie titles they do about a movie, and it was like the Marvel Cinematic Universe was a shit show. And they go into all the strife and all how screwed up it was, and and the one with Marvel Universe, it was about how they, how Favreau wanted Downey, but the suits didn't want Downey, and because he was such a risk. Yeah, so check out the channel. It was a shit show. I think that's the name of it, and those stories are great because it's great to know that that great work comes out of chaos.
Yeah.
Wright says he loves buying director's cuts of Michael Mann films. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, AI generated dialogue can be bad. I agree there. So I think that as viewers, our education as viewers, if we want it, is out there, or else I just care about being entertained and being mindless.
Well, in some ways, it's like watching a football game, right? You can just sort of like, okay, they're running down the field and there's action, and hey, that's kind of cool. If you like get into it, like I used to be a serious football guy. Like I would for Monday Night Football, I'd always go to ESPN and watch Ron Jaworski breaking down a play or two from the weekend. And he would do these things where it would be a 30-second play and he'd spend 20 minutes talking about it.
Yeah, I remember that. And I love it. Right, because listening to someone like Jaworski makes you appreciate how complex being a quarterback is.
Yeah, and a lot of it was stuff like, like it just looked like that what happened was the guy ran downfield and ran a pattern and the quarterback threw to him. But in reality, there's just like this other guy all the way over there that made that play happen.
Yeah.
And he did it because he stutter stepped at the right moment to pull the defender into the wrong position to give the other guy a lane. And just how, like when a play happens and it's like the quarterback's third or fourth option. Yeah.
Like that means the quarterback's checked off like 3 other options and none of them were in his, how fast is that all? That's all happening in a second. He's like, and it's all. So they have to have such great vision and such great ability to process that. Yeah. So it's like, and it's the same thing. I mean, when you hear about directors talk about filmmaking, you're going, holy shit, I never thought of it.
You know what? Two things come to mind. One is I remember somebody on Inside the NFL talking about, I can't remember who it was. It was one of the defensive guys that was on the show. And he talked about how that by the end of his career, he'd look out, maybe he was an offensive lineman. It might have been Tony, what's his name? From the Bengals. And he said he'd look out on the line and he could, he knew what the play was going to be. He could tell exactly what they were going to do. And he said, and if I was 10 years younger, I could have done something about it. One of the things that I've noticed, I'm a relatively senior guy now, right? And so I'm sure you've had this happen. I'm sure everybody who's a senior person in their field has had this happen. You're talking with somebody and somebody will say something or another and you go, well, yeah, but you got to remember such and such. And it's like the most obvious thing in the world to you. And they look at you like, oh my God, Nostradamus is here. Like, I never would have thought of that. It's like, yeah, you're just not old enough.
Yeah. Yes.
Exactly. I predicted, like, not the last job, but the job before that. I left in part because I saw the handwriting on the wall, and it was like in big, bold letters. I could see the handwriting on the wall. It's like, I know exactly how this is going to play out. X, Y, Z is going to happen in that order. And I wasn't in any danger of losing my job by any stretch of imagination. But it's like, yeah, this job is going to become a lot less fun when that happens. And I'd been in the job for 9 years and it was time to move on anyway. And I wanted to be closer to Iowa at the time. And so it was a good time to leave. And so I told a bunch of colleagues, I said, people would say, why are you leaving? I said, okay, just between you and me, here's how I read the situation. They all thought I was nuts. And then 6 months later, I get this phone call and somebody called me up and said, you were Nostradamus. You were totally and completely right. They just announced the reorg. It's exactly what you said it was going to be.
Yeah.
And all I did was sort of look at, like, where are the demand signals and what are the resources we have and how is the boss going to allocate resources to meet demand signals. That's all it was. That's all it was. And who in leadership is going to fight back against that? I concluded nobody in my leadership was going to fight back against it. They were all actually probably going to be on board with it. And so they were going to redefine what my team did. And that's exactly what happened. So
yeah, it's wisdom. That's what it is. It's wisdom.
It's being old. We're old, Alec. We're old.
Yeah, I know. I turned 65 here in just over a month.
Yeah, and I turned 60 back in April. So
there you go. Yeah. So I'm trying to get. I'm within striking distance, but I'm trying to get to be in the best shape I've been in since, well, in a long time.
Yeah, and the kid is commenting on this too. So.
The what?
Alyssa said, and then there's me.
Right. Look, young whippersnapper. Yeah. Yeah, but it is amazing. I mean, especially I'm doing some business with someone who's 22 years younger than me, and he's a former state trooper, and so very different life. Never been an entrepreneur. So, came to me because he was looking to do something, and I just happened to be starting another business, and it's wonderful to be able to share things that your wisdom from learning. And let me tell you, you're like for example, you're lucky, but you're making a lateral move as far as you're just staying in your industry.
Yeah.
Right. You're not going to a new industry. As an entrepreneur, I'm always in a new industry. Right. And there's so much to learn every new industry. It can be daunting, But
on the flip side, I think actually it helps keep you it's good to be in an always learning mindset.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. By the way, you notice the painting back there.
Mm-hmm.
If you've seen Rob Caswell did a series of I'll show on my next live stream a series of reimagined covers to the James Blish Star Trek novels.
Oh, okay. Caswell's good. I like him.
Yeah, he's amazing. The other one I have outside is all 12 covers on one. He sold these limited edition prints a year or two ago. So anyway, there you go.
And I of course know him because he was a Traveler artist for a long time.
He was a what?
A Traveler role-playing game.
Oh, okay.
He did the deck plans for my all-time favorite Traveler starship.
Oh, wow.
Which is the Fiery class gun escort.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, Rob's a great guy. Great guy.
So let's see. We got a couple of questions here, and then I do actually I've been doing some interesting reading, and I want to talk about that a little bit too. Let's take a look at the questions. My brother asked the question, why are they called photon torpedoes? The canonical answer to that is if you go back to The World of Star Trek, I think it is, by Stephen Whitfield. I think that's the name of that book. Stephen Whitfield was a good friend of Gene Roddenberry, and I think Roddenberry's name is also on the title. They talk about it's matter and antimatter held apart in a photomagnetic field. And so what does that mean? That's a really good question. That is, it's never actually really seriously defined exactly what a photomagnetic field is, other than, I mean, you get to the point where the answer is trite, right? Photons are how energy is transmitted around. Okay, so everything's a photomagnetic field at that point. They don't really explain the details of exactly what they mean by that. And so we don't really know. For a long time, that was about as defined as photon torpedoes were. In fact, I went looking at one point in the relatively recent past, like last 6 months, looking for this reference. There was some, I think it was a fan-produced thing, but I could be wrong about that, before Wrath of Khan, that indicated that photon torpedo tubes were the weapon, as opposed to just being this tube, right? That a photon torpedo tube generates a photon torpedo, and that a photon torpedo is basically an electromagnetic phenomenon of some sort where the matter and antimatter is held apart. It's basically put in a little energy bubble and fired out of the tube. And that lasted right up until the point when Wrath of Khan came out and they needed a casket for Spock. And so since Wrath of Khan, photon torpedoes have been this casket-shaped thing that has a warhead inside of it that has some matter and antimatter. And then that begs the question, okay, if that's what a photon torpedo is, what is a plasma torpedo? Which, of course, is what the Romulans fire. And there's all sorts of discussion about what a plasma torpedo might be. And this is actually something that Andy and Pat Doyle and I have been talking about recently. In fact, I saw Pat Doyle Thursday night. So part of being an airline pilot is you don't necessarily know where you're sleeping that night. And so he was on a flight to Salt Lake City and was told his bed was in Seattle. And he gets to Salt Lake City and they say, no, your bed is in Washington, D.C.
Oh, my God.
And so he was supposed to deadhead to Seattle, and because they were basically repositioning him so he could take a flight like 52 hours later. He was just basically going to hang in Seattle for 2 days. And they said, you know what, we can squeeze another flight in here. And so they put him on as a pilot, and he flew to D.C. And so I'm just south of D.C. I drove up and had dinner with him, and then
I saw an interesting video about it was all about Southwest Airlines.
Yeah,
basically it was predicting the demise of Southwest Airlines, basically because they got rid of all the things that made them a special airline. They've gotten rid of because new investors came in and wanted changes, right? But they also went back and talked about the big snowstorm fiasco from a couple of years ago, and
Yeah.
it devastated them. And the whole problem was, and it was like, yeah, and I talk about, I hate to use the word perfect storm because I hate that, but it was like Southwest was the airline that got screwed in that whole deal because of the way they did business, because they weren't hub and spoke. They were point to point. And they also one of the big things was they contracted out their de-icing of their planes. And that was a huge issue. Anyway, this whole video was just amazing.
And they also have scheduling software that, as near as I can tell, runs on a couple of old TRS-80s.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so their software infrastructure is famously bad.
Yeah, famously bad. Yeah.
And they've been able to make it work despite that. The other thing is, at one point they won the Brilliance Award. They locked in a long-term contract on fuel prices way back when. And so they were paying significantly less in fuel than everybody else was paying, because everybody else had short-term contracts and they had a long-term contract and they got a good deal. I think that contract is long expired by now.
Sure.
And so they had this +2 to hit that they just lost, and they don't have it anymore.
Yeah.
I used to know a Southwest pilot. I went to graduate school with him. He was an Air Force guy, and he had sort of an interesting career plan. He wanted to be a pilot, and his plan was to only take flying billets, to never do a ground billet. He was only going to take flying assignments. That will get you to major, and then they kick you out because you haven't checked all the boxes. And he said, I will get to major. They will kick me out. I will join the reserves, and I will become an airline pilot. And that's exactly what he did.
Hey,
and then he finished in the reserves. He was a AC-130 pilot at the end.
Oh, wow.
And then he transitioned over to 737. So
very cool. Very cool.
But I need to track him down. I haven't talked to him in a while. So let's see, what else do we have here? That's why they're photon torpedoes, Delon.
Here, I'll just show everyone our new camera, Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Cam.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was camera lens adapter, $2,000. No interest for a year. I mean, it was great. I paid it off, but
that's like normal people money almost.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy. You're not gonna shoot Avatar on this thing, but man, for most little indie stuff, and certainly everything we do, it's a hell of a little camera. So yeah, very, very excited about that.
That's cool.
Yeah. So
let's see. Wright asked the question. He said that he finished the audiobook version of On Basilisk Station by David Weber. Any chance we could have some Honorverse content, maybe a breakdown of the HMS Fearless engagement? That's entirely possible. I, of course, know a bunch of people that could talk about that sort of stuff. I can talk about some of that too. I've been actually meaning to do some Honorverse content on this show. I just haven't gotten around to doing it. There's other people that I'd want to bring in to do that, and it requires a little bit of organizational work on my part. So right, it is on the list.
Hey, also, if there's anyone out there, I've got a couple books here that I need to get rid of, and if anyone wants them, just pay me the shipping. This is the Overstreet comic book grading guide. Now it is kind of old, but it talks all about it's. I've never even read it, but I've got that. Just call it out in the comments if you want. This is, and then now I've got an old copy, and gosh, this is the 26th edition of Overstreet comic book price guide, hardcover. These things used to be the Bibles until the internet came along. And this is 1996. So this is 30 years old almost. But I've got this. Anyone who wants these, I'll just pay for the shipping And then from this past week's Heritage auction, there was a Bob Peak auction. The original art to Apocalypse Now went for $500,000, along with a bunch of others, including Excalibur. Anyway, this one, as well as the catalog for the Cecil B. DeMille collection. If you want those two catalogs, just let me know and just pay the media mail shipping, which is like $5-6, and you can have one or all of them if you guys want, if someone wants.
Okay, so if you want that, send an email to Alec or post it.
Alec@axonar.com.
Yeah,
or just in yours.
Do you know the link between Excalibur and Conan the Barbarian?
No, what's the link?
So when they were getting ready to do Conan the Barbarian, they needed a theme song for Conan, and they needed a main theme for the movie. And the original plan was Carmen Burina.
Oh wow!
And then they went, "Oh fuck!" They just used it in Excalibur.
Yeah.
And so instead of doing that, they turned to Basil Papadopoulos and said, "Come up with something," and he did.
I was talking to my friend about 2 weeks ago, a friend who I haven't really talked to in about 10 years. And we reconnected. He's in the industry.
Okay.
And he just drops the name of John Milius. And he says, "Oh yeah," and he has a relationship with John. And I go, "Oh my God, John Milius." He's like, "Yeah, you want to meet him sometime?" I go, "Fuck yeah." Because basically, well, first of all, John Milius wrote Wind in the Lion, the Sean Connery, Candice Bergen, Brian Keith epic about, a fictionalized version of Teddy Roosevelt and the Barbary Pirates. But it is an epic movie with Jerry Goldsmith's score to die for. And Milius wrote that. I love it. It's like one of my top 3 movies. I probably put that, Lawrence of Arabia, and Blade Runner as my top 3 movies. Because I love that. And then he also, of course, wrote Red Dawn, which,
one of these things is not like the others.
Yeah, I know. And then he wrote Conan. Right? He wrote, right? Wasn't he the writer of Conan the Barbarian? That
sounds right.
Yeah, he's an amazing. But the other thing, he also wrote.
I did that one already, Lissa. I did that one already.
He also wrote. John Milius also wrote Farewell to the King, the Nick Nolte, Nigel Havers movie, World War II movie about an American army officer who goes native. And if you haven't seen Farewell to the King, you absolutely got to watch that movie, because the thing, besides being written by John Milius, that as well as Red Dawn both have amazing Basil Polidorus scores. Amazing. Farewell to the King is one of the I just absolutely love that score. It's got a couple tracks that are just truly epic. So anyway, there you go.
So this is a question for you, Alec.
Yeah, I saw this. What are your thoughts on people making Star Trek mods that include the Ares? Stellaris has a great Star Trek mod that has the Ares and TMP version. Yeah, I love it. The Stellaris guys contacted me years ago, and of course, I'm all for it. As a matter of fact, there is a version of the Centaur class in Star Trek Online, like an updated version, where they basically ripped off the Ares, which is ironic because the Ares, it was inspired by the Centaur, but basically the whole secondary hull is the Ares, which of course you drop a sorcerer on the secondary hull and it's the Ares. And people keep sending that to me and going, "Hey, the Ares is in Star Trek Online." I go, "They're not calling it the Ares," but so we're honored. Absolutely, I'm honored. That's absolutely fantastic. Couldn't flattery. of course, is the highest form of praise.
Yes. So Stephen Ross says, I would have thought Chris would have been watching Greyhound. I actually haven't seen Greyhound all the way through.
Seriously, dude?
You need an Apple Plus. I just got it.
What the fuck are you watching on TV?
I really don't watch much TV. I don't even own a TV right now.
Well, it's streaming. I guess, is that Apple Plus?
Yeah, it's Apple Plus. So
there you go. You'll be able to watch it.
So I'm pretty sure it's Apple Plus. So I've watched clips from it. So I've seen a bunch of the different stuff, and I liked what I saw. I especially like things like Tom Hanks's character gives him an order and then immediately says, "Nope, belay that. Do the opposite instead." Like, turn hard left rudder. No, belay that, hard right rudder. And it's like, it's like he made a quick decision. He got a little bit more chance to look at what was going on. And one of the things to keep in mind with all of that, when you're watching that, they do these overhead shots where you can clearly see the torpedo and you can see the geometry. Tom Hanks's character does not have that view.
No.
Tom Hanks's character is trying to, I think I see a torpedo over there, and he's trying to judge things from a lot worse angle.
Yeah.
And so there's at least one point where the first time I watched it, I said, well, why did he do that? And the more I thought about it, the more I thought two things. First of all, I've got a much better angle on it than he does. Second of all, it's important to remember steam plants are not instantaneous response. It's not like driving a car where you press the accelerator down and you go faster. You are calling somebody else and saying, hey, guy with the throttle, I need you to change the speed.
Yeah.
And if they've got steam up, which they would in combat, everything would be operating at maximum. The boilers would be full and they'd be at full pressure. They might be able to respond faster, but usually, like, if you're calling for steam and you don't have steam up, you'll get it like 20 minutes, half hour later.
Yeah, that's great. Well, the thing about, I also saw a bunch of BTS stuff on Greyhound, because that's almost 100% CG.
Yeah.
Which is amazing, which is truly amazing, because it's a fantastic movie. And, but the other thing it shows you is the form of combat. Like once the submarine surfaced, they were kind of screwed.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was just like, yeah, they may have had a gun and everything, but you know what? And meanwhile, the destroyer is just pounding the shit out of it with its, forget the big gun. It's pounding the shit out of it with all their little stuff. So yeah,
and I liked when basically at one point he's when the one submarine surfaces, he specifically says individual mount control, or words to that effect, which basically means you are no longer under the control of the director. So there's a turret up there. This is one of the ways you can tell the difference between a destroyer escort and a destroyer, is that in general, destroyers have a gun director turret. It looks like a turret, except it has no guns. It just has the big binoculars sticking out of the side. And so you've got a gun director up there organizing the gunfire. But they do have individual mount controls. They can go to individual mount direction. And so he basically says, go to individual mount direction, because he just needs them to fire fast. He doesn't need to fire coordinated. It's like, I can see the target. It's right there. Just fire at it.
Yeah.
And so he tells them to go do that, and everybody plugs away at it. I'm currently reading Paul Stilwell's book on Admiral Willis Lee, who was the admiral at the Battle of Washington versus Hiroshima versus South Dakota. And it's a good book. It is not quite as good as I expected it to be. There's some stuff that is in Ivan Musicant's Battleship at War, which is the bio of the USS Washington, but it happens to talk about Lee a lot. that I would have expected to be in Stillwell's book about how, Lee basically came in and said, I got this idea. I think that radar is going to be really, really important. So he turned over his at-sea cabin, which is right off the Admiral's Bridge. He turned it over to turn it into a radar repeating station, had them cut a hole in the armor, to put in a plexiglass plate so that they could do the backwards writing on it, because so that he could be on the flag bridge and he could see where the radar contacts were. And at those days, when we think of a radar screen, we think of a top-down view with sort of a sweep arm going around. That's not what they looked like originally. It used to be that what you'd get a spike at a particular distance. As they rotated it around, you'd get a spike. And based upon the size of the spike, you'd know how big it was and how far. There was some way you could tell how far away it was. I can't read that scope worth a damn. So don't ask me how to read it. I don't know. But it's a lot harder but they turn it into a top view and give that to Lee.
Oh, interesting.
And Lee was fantastic. Lee was, for like 60 years, he had the record for the greatest number of Olympic medals.
Really?
He was a marksman who was almost kicked out of the Navy for bad eyesight. Because as a kid, he and his cousin, I think it was, were playing around with like firecrackers, and they basically made a bomb. And Lee was a little bit too close to it and looking at it when it went off. And for a while there, they thought he was going to lose his sight.
Wow.
But he had significant eye damage, but it didn't stop him from competing on the marksman team and winning like 6 medals.
Wow.
And at the Battle of Veracruz, which is, the Navy goes ashore, they were having a problem with snipers shooting at the Navy guys. So he said, okay, I tell you what, I'll take my rifle and I'll go out into the middle of the town square and just sort of sit there and wait. And when a sniper pops up, I'll shoot him. And that's what he did. And he got like 3 or 4 of them.
Wow.
And if there were more snipers, they decided that maybe they didn't want to play this game because Lee could see them and get a shot off faster than they could popping up from behind cover on the rooftops. Wow. And so I think he got a Navy Cross for that. And then he got like another Navy Cross for sinking Hiroshima. So he's my favorite World War II naval officer. He's my favorite World War II naval officer. I think also I disagree a little bit with Stillwell's discussion on Halsey, specifically the Battle of Leyte Gulf. There's some nuances to that battle that the people throwing rocks at Halsey forget some important things that Halsey did not forget. It was basically the argument that Halsey made, which was Halsey was not the officer in tactical command. Kincaid was the officer in tactical command. It was Kincaid's responsibility to make sure that the Suragawa Strait was plugged. If he wanted it plugged, it was his responsibility to make sure it was plugged. Now, that doesn't mean that it had to be his ships. He could have said, hey, Halsey, can you help me out? And Halsey's orders said, basically, if Kincaid asked for help, give it to him. Kincaid never asked. He just made the assumption that Halsey was doing that because Halsey's staff sent out a message to the battleship saying, be prepared to split off from the rest of the force and plug the strait. But they never sent an execute order. And it wasn't addressed to Kincaid. And the US Navy doctrine at the time said, do not act based upon messages to other people that aren't addressed to you. If you're going to act on something, you should call them and say, are you doing X? He didn't do that. Now, if you want to throw rocks at Halsey, the place to throw rocks at Halsey and his staff is that when Kincaid and his staff started screaming for help, hey, I need fast battleships and I need them now, he didn't immediately turn the battleships around and send them south to go help out with Kincaid. He continued going after the Japanese carriers. So it's a fair cop to say that that's the point at which Halsey screwed up. Halsey should have, when Kincaid asked for help, he should have given him help because he was there to help Kincaid. Now, his orders did say if you get an opportunity to sink the Japanese carriers, go do that. But you can make the argument that he lost the forest for the trees when Kincaid actually asked for help. So, but it's a good book. I'm doing the audiobook version. I'm about an hour from the end. I'll listen to it probably as I drive up to National Airport to pick up a friend, and then we're going to go off to a wargaming conference next week. So, but we are at the hour and 15-minute mark. Let me take a quick look to see if there's any questions, comments, concerns that we should address, and then I do want to throw up a slide real quick. Wright says Lee and Nimitz are his two favorite admirals. Stephen Ross said for a minute there he was feeling young at 56, and Lisa spoiled it. I always make the comment to people when I hear they've turned 50. I always ask them the question, have you hurt yourself sleeping yet? Because anybody who's that age knows that you'll get to the point where you will discover that you like pulled a muscle in your sleep. It's really annoying. Let's see. Okay. Hello, Mike. Happy birthday. I already wished him happy birthday, but I'll wish him happy birthday again. Okay, let's see. Nothing else there. Let me throw up the slide real quick. It's basically what the schedule is going to look like. So today is the 26th of July. We obviously had a show. I plan on having shows for the 2nd, 9th, and 16th of August because I currently don't have anything else scheduled. I am going to be out all week. I get back like late Thursday. And then the people show up with stuff on Saturday. So I don't yet know what show I'm going to do on the 2nd of August. So nobody should get their hopes up that it's going to be a big presentation. Although I do want to, I've got some in the queue that I want to work on. Including some stuff listed right there. One of the things I've added to the list, I can't remember if I've said it previously, is that I've decided I want to do something on the Eagle and the Hawk from Space 1999 and something on UFO, because I have the technical manuals and I even know where they are after the move.
That's impressive.
I have the technical manuals for these things. And the Eagle, I've said this in the past, the Eagle is an incredibly classic design. It's broken. Oh my God, is it broken? It's broken in a couple of ways.
That's what the AI video was about. It was about the Eagle. It was about, because someone's redesigning the Eagle to make sense.
About 12 people are redesigning the Eagle, and some of them
there's an AI video about that.
Please send me the link. I want to see that.
I just Google it. I don't.
Okay. Because like one of the things is if you look at how they're sitting in the cockpit, etc., they can't see out the windows in front of them. The windows are literally above their eye line.
Yeah, right.
And so I know that there's at least one person who's done the drawings that like this is how they should, instead of like climbing down into the cockpit, they should be climbing up into the seats. They should be climbing up into the seats. There's other things that I think don't make sense in that, and some of the reimaginings don't make sense either. Like for instance, somebody did a reimagining where all of the nozzles on the engines are weird shapes. Okay, there's a reason why they're circular. Like there's a no shit reason why engine bells are the shape they are, and you don't have the option of just making them arbitrary shapes. If they are the type of thing that we're talking about, if you make them arbitrary shapes, you get weird vibrations and pressure spikes and stuff like that, and they end up blowing up. And so I do want to spend some time talking about that, and spend some time talking about UFO and what I think works and what doesn't. And oh my God, I love them both, but there's lots of places where they don't quite work. Matthew Tillard says, looking forward to the history of ship types. I am too. That is going to be, that's going to be a series. I think cruisers alone is going to take 3 episodes. And it's going to require a lot of reading on my part, which I've been doing all along. Longtime viewers of this show know that there's this tendency for me to go back and revisit topics that I've done previously. And I do that for 2 reasons. One is it's by no means guaranteed that like a new viewer has seen the old stuff, right? And I do not expect that somebody discovers a show and then they immediately go back and watch 150 episodes to get caught up. I don't expect it. Hey, that's great. If you want to do that, that's wonderful. I'm not gonna do something that's based upon the assumption that you've done that. The second thing is, as I read more about this stuff, as I think more about it, et cetera, I put it together in different ways and I learn things about it. And I think I have more to say. And so basically, when I think I've got to the point where I have more to say, I will do an episode on a topic I've previously discussed at some point. And sometimes I say, hey, I was totally wrong about that. Or sometimes I said, I did a 10-minute version of that. Now I'm going to do a 45-minute version of that because I've done a lot more thinking about it and I want to pull the thread on it. I'm currently reading a dissertation on the development of the hardware and the doctrine for battle cruisers in the Royal Navy and the US Navy. We never actually built our battle cruisers, but we did a hell of a lot of thinking about them. And we had a plan. And our plan was not the same as the Brits. We were going to use them totally differently than the Brits were. And the Brits really didn't do doctrine. The Brits just kind of do tradition. And they just kind of make it up as they go along. Whereas the U.S. Navy is really one of the early militaries to adopt the idea of written doctrine to get everybody on the same page, doing the same thing in concert and not just making it up as they go along. And so we developed our battle cruiser doctrine before we built our battle cruisers, because it's like, if we're going to build these things, we need to know why we're building them.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah. And
then the ironic thing about it is, because we did it that way, we never ended up building them because they went away during the Washington Naval Treaty. And as a result of that, we ended up, and I've talked about this in the past, we ended up with an interwar doctrine for our battleships that took into account that we didn't have fast, powerful forces to put at the vanguard of the battle line. And so we had to do something else. And so it's interesting how all those pieces fit together. And so at some point when I finish this dissertation, that dissertation is going to get turned into at least one episode. And then I'll, of course, talk about Starfleet and about how they just kind of make it up as they go along. Starfleet is very British when it comes to these things. They act like they're Americans, but they're really very British. And it's entirely because it's really a writer's room someplace in California. It's not really like naval guys that are actually thinking through this stuff. So, Wright says, I'll trade 2.5 built Alaskas to complete the Kentucky instead. Yeah, me too. Let's see. Mike Ryan says he's hoping to catch the Carriers in Space episode since he wasn't able to stay for the second half of the talk at PhilCon. Yeah, I'm in the process of redoing Carriers in Space. It's going to be 3 episodes. There's the original one, a version of the original one that I've been doing forever and ever. There's one that is going to be sort of focused on different models of how you do flight ops and stuff like that, and how the different models of how carriers work. And then there's going to be one that's really going to be focused on the 2005 Battlestar Galactica and how I think that one works, because I got a pretty good idea of how I think that works. It's not the way that other Carriers in Space things work. So. But with that in mind, one last thing. One Jorge says the Akira class is also a light carrier. We're going to talk about the Akira because I've been doing a lot of thinking about what the doctrine for the Akira class is. So with that in mind, everybody, I think it's probably time for us to declare victory. Alec, any last words?
Nope. Good being back on.
Yeah, it's good being back. I missed doing the show, but since the last show, I've bought a house, moved 500 miles, started a new job. So I've been busy, but it's good to be back. And so once again, I am honored the fact that we have this many people that decide that they want to spend their Saturday night listening to me talk. And in this case, listening to Alec talk too. Thank you, Alec, for coming on the show. I think I've told everybody the story about how the show started. Alec basically decided that I was going to do a show. He didn't really tell me that I was going to do a show. He just sort of handed me a show. And 170 episodes later, so that apparently works. That apparently worked very well. So thank you once again, Alec, and thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, it's the old animal rescue trick. How do you get someone to adopt a puppy? You put it in their hands.
Yes, I totally and completely get that. So,
right.
All right, thank you very much, and see you next week.